the treadle on that mousetrap would hit exactly on the camera shutter, you get one picture. That first time I walked in on that bear bait and that treadle was tripped and I had one picture. Oh my God, it was unbelievable. That's what started that deal off, was that deal with the bears, was trying to do that. But I'm talking about, we held it for probably 7, 8, 9 years before we ever let anybody know. The guys, I'd never share it with the guys. It was one of those secrets, when you were guiding, you could put them on a bear. How'd you know that bear was in there? Oh, we scouted him. We did with that camera. How about that? That is absolutely gospel truth.
We were kind of talking about the genesis of how you guys started your trail cameras. And you had a great story about bear hunting and how you guys would track the color phase bears. Can you tell that?
Yeah,
that was fantastic.
And that is the absolute truth about it. We were carrying customers up to Canada bear hunting. A lot of the guys wanted color phase bears. And we tried everything. We welded big tuna hooks like you just got off of to the drum. And if it would scrape a little bit of hair, you'd go and you'd see that red hair and you'd say, hey, there's a cinnamon bear here. There's a red black bear here. There's one that's got a big white chevron on him. There's white hair on it, and you could find out, but there was no way to know. Nobody had cameras. And there was, and this is long time ago in the industry. This is at the very first of it. That's when we were carrying some of the feeder customers up there, and we'd stay up there and hunt. And 3M made a little timer. And this is really where I got the idea from. And it had a string that would go to it and a piece of plastic. And all it was like a watch front clock. And when you pull that out, it broke the battery contact. And when you stuck it back in, just like your microwave does now, when the power comes back on, it shows the time. Mm-hmm. It showed the time. So you could tell when a bear hit the bait, you could say, hey, that bear hit the bait at 1:12 in the morning. He's a nocturnal bear. We're not going. And it would get you in the game somewhere, giving you information. And I kept thinking, how can we figure this out about the bear? And I bought a Victor rat trap, those that are about that big, not the mouse trap, the rat trap, broke the spring down to where it would just sort of push, not slam like it does. And I went and I found a camera, and the earliest ones had self-advance, and y'all may not even be old enough to remember, when you go in the stores, at every counter was film canisters, 12, 24, 36 rolls of film. I remember the guy that was buying impulse items at Walmart, Clifford Young, buddy of mine that was up there, the buyer impulse, and no telling how many $1 billion worth of merchandise he would buy. His top 3 items was film. And that was, everybody had film camera. And that in today's world, everybody's like film. But so you had that camera and you had to manually click it to get the shutter to go off. So we made it, I Rube Goldberg'd it, put the same kind of string as that 3M timer had on it, but our own deal to that rat trap. The treadle on that mouse trap would hit exactly on the camera shutter. You get one picture. And the first time, and I've told you downstairs, all this now of, you get 1,000 pictures a day, it's AI sorts them and tell it, and that's cool, as good as it gets. That first time I walked in on that bear bait and that treadle was tripped and I had one picture. Oh my God, it was unbelievable. You'd go to the store, there was a little store up in that little place in Canada, and you'd have to pay the 1 hour, and I'm thinking, God, the 1 hour. And then one thing I did, and I've told this a couple of times, it's great. Never would I use my name, because I was thinking they'd know where we were hunting and they'd see that picture of that bear on that bait. They'd know. So we always would put a fictitious name so they wouldn't know where it was. And we would get the pictures back, and you'd have one picture. You'd pay for that whole roll. So then it became, well, can we wait a day? Do you pay the 1 hour processing, or do you pay the deal? And we had it for years. We carried a ton of guys, and I've told you downstairs, the change was, my buddy of mine in Texas that was a mogul in the hunting industry, everybody knew him. He was it. It was Ray Mursky. and knew more about selling stuff than anybody. And he said, you've got to develop this with the feeder. He was our rep then too, his rep organization. And so we got it ready to go to market, carried it to a couple people. You talking about getting no, not no, you talking about getting hell no. We're not going to carry that. People think it's, I remember the buyers telling me, you think some guy's wife's going to let him spend $300 on a camera and put it out in the woods? You know, that before that, nobody ever put a camera in the woods. And Ray went to the sporting goods board and he stood up for us and he said, guys, if you'll stop, he said, listen to what I'm telling you. This will be one of the biggest items ever in the hunting industry. How he knew that, I don't know, but his forethought, he hit it dead on the head. Dead on the head. Because here's the reason. Everybody has suits of camo, everybody has tree stands, everybody. But if you got cameras, you got bunches of them. And about everybody who hunts now has gone into that camera deal. And so we're very fortunate it went that way. But that's what started that deal off, was that deal with the bears, was trying to do that. But I'm talking about, we held it for probably 7, 8, 9 years before we ever let anybody know. The guys, I'd never share it with the guys. It was one of those secrets, you know, when you were guiding, you could put them on a bear. How'd you know that bear was in there? Oh, we scouted him. We did, with that camera. How about that? That is absolutely gospel truth.
So what year was that? When you made the first one with the rat trap and the tripwire?
Way back, way back. I mean, early 80s. Early 80s, way, way back.
Man, it's so funny hearing that too, because like hunters are going to be hunters, and you had like this product that would end up being this big thing, but you're like, I don't want to share this.
I remember I was telling people, and people would just say, no, no, and you know what? But it was that specific deal. Little did I, and bear hunting on the pie chart is a little bitty sliver. Whitetail hunting is that great big sliver. That's what I was missing that Ray Marsky kept saying, Mosley, you got to get to this sliver with it.
And then, so how long, so those first cameras, you got one picture out of them?
One picture.
One picture.
One picture.
How long did it take you to develop something where you could get multiple pictures out of it?
You then became, in the early days of cameras, instead of a manual wind, they had a little motor in it. And if you remember I don't know, y'all are too young to remember, but when it went, it sounded like a bad wheelbarrow on a car. You'd hear it grrr. That's that motor grinding that. Of course, any animals in the area are going to be gone. Of course, they'd come back. But so we went to that. Then but once we decided to go to market with it, we researched it like we should have done. We got the best camera that was available and that would do all that. But you still had to go in and take because we went from a manual string being pulled, lever hitting the camera to set it off. We'd had to take the manual button apart. I remember our techs in the back soldering wires to all that button is a wire here and a wire here, and when you push it, it makes the connection. So we wired back, and then heat and motion, infrared and motion is what set them off. So then you had that triggering the camera. The hardest transition in the whole deal, and we were fortunate, I think we were the very first in digital, I know we were the first in cellular, but the transition from auto wind to digital, and most people didn't know, we were working on that. Here was the problem, and most people never saw this. We would buy these digital cameras, but for a digital camera to work, it had to stay on 24/7. You used to turn a camera on. When you would buy a digital camera, you'd hear it go, bzzz, and it's warming up. And then it would come and it'd warm up and it'd take about a minute, and then finally it'd give you ready to make a picture. The camera had to sync itself and go. You couldn't do that on game, it'd be gone. So we had to power it. We had those very first ones, I remember we would lug car batteries out there, and they'd drain those car batteries because it's running all the time. So how did we bridge that gap with getting and finally we figured out how to do that, and had enough, thank goodness for smart engineers, good Auburn engineers that could figure out how to. I had a Georgia Tech one on, so that we could get that figured out, that it wouldn't drain the battery life. But like those big ones you said about all the different batteries that was in them, that was why they would eat batteries. Even in today's market, you got one that uses double A's instead of the lithium batteries. Man, during cold weather, it's sucking it. That's the reason all the car batteries go dead when it's cold. It drains the battery. It's tough. And then that change to digital was tough. We got that figured out. That was a huge, huge change. Because then we could give you, that's when that 3-shot burst came about in the camera industry, or 5-shot burst. It could hit them and you'd have them. Because you had the camera up, running, and all electronic would flip the shutter.
Yeah, I was telling you earlier that I've tried to find it before we came here, but I've got one of those big cameras that takes a whole bunch of D batteries, and it has the white flash on it. Mm-hmm. It's like a big flash. And man, I just remember being a kid with my dad, going out to the woods to check that thing, and you like couldn't quite find it. It's starting to get dark, and that thing would, blind you.
And that didn't go when we were those earliest pictures, and you would see the game spooking. And that's when all that black flash was developed. And of course, that was the term that originally came out, no glow, black flash, all the different acronyms for that. All that was a piece of plastic put over the front of it to tame it down. Because you don't need a ton of light, but all of them were like filter cloth over the front. That was the very first. Then you would get that down where it would not spook them, and it'd be infrared. And, I guess everybody was watching too much TV about spy stuff, and they'd talk about infrared camera. We finally got to that in the hunting industry, and all the people that were in the camera industry, that flooded through the camera industry, no glow in the infrared, so that you couldn't see the flash. It absolutely makes a difference. Now, will the animal get used to it in some cases? Yeah. These Alabama deer and Georgia deer down here? Maybe not. That tough.
Yeah. I've still got old trail camera pictures of me, a little kid, and my dad checking those cameras, man. And I remember taking that. I had them for years because I couldn't go buy another camera because I was like 16 and I didn't have any money. So I just kept using those even past the point where cameras had advanced way past that, and I'm like lugging these things out in the woods, and seriously, they're ginormous. But yeah, that's a good memory of mine